Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan. I'm very excited because today it's the end of the week, which means we are overdue for a blind. And I've got a great blind lined up today. It includes 2 bottles of my own and 3 that were submitted by people in our Discord group, our Patreon supporters, etc. Some wonderfully generous people. So we've got a killer lineup of stuff that is honestly pretty top shelf. Now, it's all ryes today, and that's because we've had some new releases in the rye department. I wanted to see how they fare against some fan favorites, especially favorites here on my channel. And included in this list is, right there on my shelf right there, the old Overholt 10-year limited release from earlier this year. Man, I love that bottle, and it has only ever... It's always performed very, very well in blinds for me. In fact, it's won every blind it's ever been in for me, save for one. The only time it's ever been beaten in a blind was when it had to go up against Thomas H. Handy, which is the rye that is the BTAC Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, you know, unicorn bottle. So the chances of it ever going head-to-head with Handy again, probably pretty limited. So I was okay with it taking second place to the Handy. But today it's going to be stacked up against some pretty stiff competition. We've got like the Michter's Barrel Strength Rye. We've got, I think there's a Willet Rye in here. The Bardstown Origin Series Green Label Rye, which is in there to sort of be, I guess, sort of a, what can a $70 bottle, $80 bottle, I think is MSRP, 70 to 80 bucks for that bottle. Can that compete against some of these big dogs? I think so. I think it can hold its own. We'll see. And then also in there is, of course, the Master's Keep Triumph from Wild Turkeys. So this year's expression of Master's Keep was a 10-year-old rye whiskey. The catch with that one is it's like a $250 bottle at SRP. Usually you're going to spend a little bit more than that, probably closer to 300 bucks for that bottle. So can that bottle justify its own price tag within this lot of whiskeys? You know, I think of the Overholt 10 years, a $100 bottle, and it's absolutely killer, and it's 10 years old as well from a legacy distiller. So why would I spend 250 bucks on Triumph if old Overholt 10 years is only 100 bucks for the same age? You know what I'm saying? We'll see how they fare against each other head to head. So my wife generously poured this blind for me. I know what's on the table. I don't know where they are on the table. But they're all lined up here behind me on the table from left to right, glasses A through E. I'll taste them, I'll share some notes on them, and then eventually I will rank them from worst to best. And then the key for them, what every glass is folded up on a piece of paper underneath the coasters, and I'll reveal at the end what they were, and we'll see what took what place. And as always, I will show on screen for you when I edit the video what I'm tasting as I'm tasting it, so you know, even though I don't know. Sound good? Let's get started. Glass A. Oh, I get hit with a great, like, I think peanut brittle on the nose. You know, toffee with those peanuts in it. After it's set, gets real hard. Yeah, that's the very first thing I got on the nose of this was peanut brittle. I think it's carrying some okay heat on it too, but it could just be because I haven't had any whiskey yet today. You know, it's kind of peculiar. I'm getting I don't know, I mean, I've reviewed all of these whiskeys in the blind. I don't think I got this tasting note or nosing note on any of them before. But this one's almost giving me like a red chili pepper heat. That kind of a peppery heat on it, which is kind of cool too. I love sweet and heat as a flavor combination. I'm a big fan of spicy margaritas because I love that heat with the sweet, you know what I'm saying? So I don't mind that at all. Let's try it. Take notes as I go so I don't forget anything. I know this is out of order, but I want to comment on it while it's on the forefront of my mind. But the finish of this, I know I haven't discussed the palate yet, but the finish of it, what's lingering behind is this real confectionery sweetness that reminds me of Peeps. Remember Peeps? They come around every Easter. We pretend that we like them, but we actually don't because it's just pure sugar. And we can't even finish more than 2 of them at a time before we're like, I can't do it. I can't do it. But there's this like heavy confectionery sweetness that's hanging out on the tail end of the finish there. It's not overwhelming like Peeps are, but that's what it makes me think of. You know, that peppery heat is definitely in there in the palate. But it is very nicely balanced with the sweet, that peanut brittle note we were getting on the nose, totally here on the palate with that heat. I love that balance. This is a really good sip. I like this a lot. Yeah, that's great. Let's move on to Glass B. I mean, come on. Rich caramel and molasses on the nose, which is not something that is usually the first thing you get on a rye whiskey, but I'm getting it. Kind of a leathery tobacco note on here too, which is great. Love that. Also, just a fuzz, a very delicate touch of peppermint, and plenty of brown sugary oak as well. It's given this this wonderful funk note that I often get on a well-aged Kentucky product. You know, it's spent a lot of time in a damp, dark warehouse, fluctuating levels of heat, and you get that funkiness. You know what I'm saying? A little bit of funk on this. I love that. Let's try it. Cheers. Man, this is going to be a tough blind, guys. This is going to be a tough one. This one's a lot drier than the first one. I'm getting a lot more of the mintiness on the palate itself. This dry oak. It's less oily in terms of mouthfeel. Much more tannic. I would liken it to the mouthfeel of like a Pinot Noir or something like that. Some good funky oak notes here on the palate as well. The finish is much more of the minty and the oak. Those leather and tobacco notes, I think, are if they're anywhere, they're more like in the middle of the palate, but they taper off pretty quickly, which gives it some nice base briefly, and then you get to transition away from it and just hang out on some brighter minty notes. Yeah, it's quite different from the first one. The first one felt more desserty. This is more, I don't know, if you're the kind of person that likes a gin and tonic, you would probably prefer this to the first glass. Does that make sense? For me, it depends on my mood. I think that I could go either way on 1 and 2 depending on my mood, but I won't spoil where I'm at today for you until the very end. Let's move on to glass C. Okay, here we go, glass C, giving it a little bit of a roll. It does not look super thick or viscous. It's leaving a really thin coating around the glass. Oh, very different on the nose. First things I'm getting are fresh pears and honey. Yeah. I used to love pears as a kid. I'd ask my mom to get fresh pears from the grocery store all the time because I just loved to snack on them. Skin on too, definitely with skin on. This reminds me of pears, and that honey note is coming through real strong. This is really crisp and clean, bright and fruity. A little bit of a spearmint note on the nose as well. On the nose, I'd say this is much more traditional rye notes, right? Much more traditional, like Pennsylvania style. Let's try it. Cheers. Oh man, that's great. Super traditional, but executed very well. On the palate alone, I feel like this is a lower proof than the first two might have been. Much more approachable in that regard. Very gentle, very sweet. I know a lot of people think of ryes as, I think the way that it's distilled is maybe a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes because it's very temperamental in distillation. It acts up. It's like a naughty teenager, you know, a little adolescent. In distillation, rye needs to be kept into very specific parameters or else it will get really fizzy and bubbly, and it could have some adverse effects on your still and on your fermenting vessels and stuff like that because you got to keep all that stuff under wraps or else it likes to act up and be kind of naughty. Well, a lot of people think of ryes as being a little more attitude, a little bitey. And not all of them are that way. I felt like I was a pretty good teenager. You know, I think I was a pretty well-mannered teen. I didn't act up too much. This is like that. It toes the line between having some attitude, but also keeping it pretty mellow, keeping it pretty chill. I think of like honey mead on the palate. But it definitely has that minty quality, fresh cut grass as well. And that pear note did persist as well. I like that. Pretty traditional, pretty mellow. Let's go on to glass D. This one is going to be on the nose, very similar to the last. Think of pine trees and juniper berries on the nose. Like that juniper note that you get on a really good gin. That's what this reminds me of on the nose. Very little oak on it. And a sort of apricot-y yellow fruit note as well on the nose. On the nose, it makes me think of wintertime. Think of snow covering a frozen lake. Pine trees on the banks. That's what this makes me think of on the nose. Let's try it. Cheers. This was very simple, not too complex. The pine and the juniper right up front. That minty note persists throughout the entire thing. The finish starts to lean a lot more sweet than the front of the palate is. Like buttercream frosting on the finish. This one's really tame, really timid. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with this one or the last one. Both of them have been a little more approachable, a little more palatable though. Less attitude, more mellow. All right, on to the last one. I love blinds because the comparative nature of it. It's really easy to come up with an idea of what a whiskey is like and how you feel about it when it's by itself. It's another thing entirely to have it next to all these other iterations of something similar. And it gives you a much more wide appreciation of nuance within one category of whiskey, which I think has a lot of value to it. Glass E. Woo! Okay. That one took a swing at me. Reached right up out of the glass and punched me in the nose coming off those 2 mellow pours. There's a nutty quality to it, like roasted pecans. A subtle mintiness, not as prominent in the mint department as the last 2, but it's definitely there. On the nose, I think of a wood shop, A wood shop, like a belt sander, there's a little bit of dust in the air, leather-wrapped handles on metal tools. It feels like a wood shop on the nose. And there's a lot of sweet oak on the nose as well. All right, I'm going in on it. Cheers. That's terrific. Yeah. Leather and licorice. That anisey note. Oh, yeah. The more it sits on the tail end of my palate and then into the finish, the more that sweet anise comes forward. Okay, that's really good. It's giving me some of those dark, rich sweet notes. Sometimes I get these bright sweet notes like vanillas and brown sugars and the buttercream frosting. This is less like that. This, when I say it's sweet, I mean it's more like molasses. It's this thick sweetness, you know what I'm saying? It's a word you kind of got to chew on, molasses. And those white raisins that you get in trail mix sometimes? Reminds me of those too. It has a real hourglass shape to it in terms of its profile. Or I'm getting on the bottom end those rich, dark, sweet notes that I just described. But on the top end of it, there's also this dry sort of pepperiness as well, which is only on the front half of the palate, and then it dissipates pretty quickly and leaves a lot of the richness and the oak behind and the anise notes. But this is an extremely well-balanced pour, and I really like it. Man, this is really tough because I think my top 3 are extremely close to one another. I mean, extremely close. Okay, so I'm going to revisit these real quick, take some final notes, and then I'll go ahead and give you my ranking from worst to best. But I will give a little bit of a disclaimer here. There wasn't a single pour today that I disliked. So even when I give something last place, just know that I think that the last place pour today could go toe-to-toe with a lot of bottles and win. I don't think there's a bad pour on the table. So bear that in mind. Okay, I gotta tell you guys, my top 3 were very hard. It took a lot of deliberation for me to come up with an order for the top 3. They were super neck and neck. But I think this is my final ranking. In last place, and note that this is my mood today. Could change tomorrow, could change later today if I did the same blind. But for today, last place in 5th place is going to be Glass D. So this is one we said we got pine, juniper, a little bit of apricot. It's kind of muted, a little bit of buttercream on the finish. That's going to take 5th place today. It's very traditional, but it's also really approachable, really palatable. I like it for what it is and what it's meant to be, but for my mood today, I kind of wanted some more rich. I guess I was in the mood for something kind of darker and richer today. So Glass D is going to take 5th place. In 4th place is going to be Glass C. For similar reasons. Like I said, I wanted something maybe a little bit more dark and savory alongside those peppery notes. It was really good, really traditional notes, pears and honey. We said a little bit of a honey mead kind of a note. Yeah, thought that was pretty good. 3rd place is going to be, and this was tough, Glass A. I mean, it easily could have been 2nd place, but for today, I'm putting it in 3rd place, Glass A. We said sweet heat. That peanut brittle note was really prominent, butterscotchy with those roasted peanuts in there, but then also is offset by this nice red chili pepper kind of a note, which I love that sweet heat combination. Thought it was great. That's going to take 3rd place. 2nd place is going to be Glass E. Okay, I said we got a little bit of pecan, some subtle mint, wood shop notes, anise, molasses. What a great pour, man. Come on, that was delicious. I would never be upset to have that in my glass at all. That's 2nd place, which means 1st place goes to Glass B, which we said gave us leather and tobacco, caramel, some peppermint, some nice funkiness on it too, and a fairly dry mouthfeel. They could have been flip-flopped. 1, 2, and 3 could have been in any order today. They were all very good. But I know that the differences between these could be a big factor when you know what they are. So if they are that close to one another and one of these bottles costs 80 bucks and one of them costs 250 bucks, then I'm going to take the $80 pour 10 out of 10 times. You know what I'm saying? If they're that close. I don't have any like hard guesses as to what any of these are. I do think, though, I will say this. I think my bottom two, C and D, which took 4th and 5th, C and D, I think between the two of those, one is the Willet, and I think one is the Bardstown. I don't know which is which, but I would say that would be my guess. I could be totally off on that, but I think that one of them is the Bardstown Origin, and I think that one of them is the Willet, because they were pretty mellow and very traditional, and both of those bottles, both of those pours tend to lean that way. Ah, man, I think, I could be wrong, but I think my top two, I think one of them is going to be the Overholt, and one of them is going to be the Michters, which means I think that 3rd place is probably the Master's Keep. But we'll see. So that's the only like hard guess, but that was like more process of elimination than anything else. But let's get in here and we'll check them. Last place, Glass D. You know, and I'm not too surprised by this. It's the Bardstown Origin Rye, which I said it was either going to be that or it was going to be the Willet. But that doesn't surprise me too much. That's like a $70 bottle. Like I said, very good. Mellow. It's had 7 years. Let me check the bottle. 6 years, my bad. 6 years. That rye has had time to mellow out. And it's really traditional, very approachable, and I like it a lot. But again, it's pretty low in the price department for a rye of its age, and that's why it's pretty competitive. That took last place today, which means 4th place, Glass C. I said the process of elimination now, that's probably the Willet, but let's see. It is, yes. This is the Willet. This is 4-year straight rye whiskey at cask strength. This was sent in by Brian. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you, brother. Very kind of you, as always. But the Willet 4-year straight rye cask strength. That bottle looks great on shelf, by the way. It's just wonderful packaging, wonderful bottling and branding. So I think it displays really well. But like I said tonight, gave me those pears and honey with spearmint. Very delicious, very mellow, very approachable. I liked it a lot. Has really traditional rye vibes to it, but I think it actually performs better than its age statement. At 4 years old, I think that it tastes more like a 6-year-old than anything else. So credit where it's due, Willet. I think that rye punches above its weight class. Now, nowadays, I think that bottle actually goes for around 70 bucks, 70 to 75 bucks, if I could, if I'm not mistaken. I think originally it was like a $55 bottle, but I think that was like 3-4 years ago, so it's got to have inflated by then. So I think you're sitting around that $70-$75 price range for that bottle, which is the same as the Bardstown rye. So I don't think you can go wrong either way on those. And now we come to the top 3. This has me a little bit heart palpitations going on here because I'm a little nervous about these because I always I really want the Overholt to do really well, but I have to recognize my bias. I love that bottle. It has historically performed very well for me, but I don't actively try to look for it and pick it out of a blind and rank it higher because of that. I try to just go on what I'm tasting that day and what I appreciate. So I honestly don't know where this is going to fall. I think it's going to land in the top 2, but I'm about to find out if I placed it lower. But here we go. Glass A took 3rd place today. Glass A was... Okay. So I was wrong here. Well, I'm right that Overholt's in the top 2, but I was wrong at where the Michter was going to fall. But Michter's Barrel Strength Rye, that took 3rd place. That tasted so much more mellow than Barrel Strength. Interesting. Either way, like I said, these top 3 could have gone any way today. But that's good. And I think that one was sent in by Matt. Matt, thank you so much for that sample. Appreciate it, brother. Very generous of you. Whew, okay, I'm nervous. At least Overholt made the top 2. And I said these two were like interchangeable for me in terms of how much I enjoyed them. So however this falls, I still think I'm going to take the Overholt over the Wild Turkey Triumph. Just because Wild Turkey Triumph is $250, Old Overholt 10-year right here is a $100 bottle. So if they taste that close to me in terms of what I prefer, whichever way this falls, I still think in terms of value, I'd have to go with the Overholt every time. But let's find out where it landed. Here we go. 2nd place went to Glass E. Second place goes to Wild Turkey Master's Keep Triumph. You know, I think this threw me for a loop because I got some notes today on this that I don't think I really picked up on the first time around. I don't think I got much of the anise and molasses. I'll have to revisit my review. I remember that I reviewed it very highly. I said it was actually a very good rye. The only problem with it was the price tag is just really asking a lot from a buyer. Like a lot from a buyer. Considering its competition in the 10-year-old rye department, $250 to me feels like a stretch. I think it's overpriced, quite frankly, but it is really good. I would happily call that a $100 to $150 bottle. But a $250 bottle, I'm just not sold on. I think part of the price tag for that bottle is the cost of the packaging and the exclusivity of it, frankly. It is fairly exclusive to get your hands on a Master's Keep from Wild Turkey. It's a bit of a flex on your shelf, has a nice box it comes in, opens up and presents the bottle, and that's cool. I'm here for the cool factor. But for me, the bottom line, at the end of the day, exclusivity is cool, but I want whiskey because I want to drink whiskey and I want to share it with people and have them drink it too. It's not up there to be an accolade. It's not up there to be a trophy. It's up there to be an option for when I'm feeling thirsty or when I have company. And so that for me is the only thing I get hung up on when it comes to Wild Turkey Master's Keep Triumph. Great, great whiskey. Too expensive. Which means first place tonight went to my tried and true, my baby, Old Overholt. Yeah, there it is. Old Overholt takes first place. This bottle consistently crushes for me. Just absolutely crushes it. I think that it got edged out in the blind against the handy, but like honestly, who's surprised with that? Every other time I have put this in a blind, it has won outright first place. And I think this has now been, what, 4 or 5 blinds for me? This is made by Jim Beam. And it's in like the escalator warehouse, so the barrel is basically changing elevations as it ages, which is a neat concept, isn't it? But it's unfiltered straight rye whiskey, aged 10 years, aged in escalator warehouse V. This was bottled in the fall of 2023 for the record. And it comes in at 121 proof. And it's so freaking good, guys. I cannot recommend that bottle enough. So there you have it. That's my glowing endorsement of Old Overholt 10 year. Again. In fact, my bottle's starting to get down. And we're under half now, which makes me a little sad. Randy in our Discord is the one that actually found the bottle for me because I could not find it in Michigan. I live in West Michigan. Couldn't find it anywhere. And he actually called me one Saturday morning, early in the morning. He's like, hey, Ryan, I'm waiting in line for this liquor store to open because they said they got some rare stuff in. Is there anything you want me to keep an eye out for? And I mentioned this bottle to him. I get another call like 30 minutes later. He's like, I found one. You want it? Yeah, I do. So big shout out to Randy for helping me get my hands on this bottle that has consistently kicked some serious butt on this channel. But that's the Rye Blind, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And let me know in the comment section how you think you would have ranked these bottles yourself, knowing what you know about them, whether you've tried them or not. Just knowing what you know about them, the age, the taste, the flavor profile, all that stuff. How do you think you would have ranked them? What's your preference when it comes to rye? I like this one because it strikes a really cool balance between having those those leathery tobacco notes, but also having the traditional minty notes that you get on a rye. It walks that line very well. It gets to exist in 2 separate worlds simultaneously, which is honestly true to its heritage. It's like a fusion between Pennsylvania rye and Kentucky rye. And that's really what it is. The Old Overholt name, that brand, goes back to Pennsylvania rye. But Jim Beam, Kentucky distiller, purchased the rights to the label and did their best to honor the heritage of it instead of just buying the label and slapping it on their own product and being like, yeah, this is Old Overholt. They took a different approach, and I think that they executed that phenomenally. And so we take the glass and we say, hey, thank you so much for tuning into the channel. I appreciate each and every one of you. If it's not your first time here, maybe you've watched a video 2 or 3, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. We'd love you to kick your shoes off and stay a while. Check out our Discord. Great people in there having great conversations, and we thoroughly enjoy each other's company, and we like to do some fun stuff together too. And we got some great stuff coming up to do with the Patreon supporters as well. If you want to get involved in the Patreon group, the base level is just $1. It's literally $1. It's super super freaking cheap. But then there's also exclusive benefits for those at higher tiers as well. But cheers, my friends. Thank you so much for your support, your viewership, and especially my supporters who send in samples for me to make videos like this. Thank you so much. Cheers, my friends. May you live richly and get better with age. And I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.